Alright guys, thank you so much. We have another fun video in our Kill Rationalism series today. Now this is going to be a little more fun, less intellectual takedown, but still hopefully you can come away with something. Today we're going to be going through my favorite anti-rationalist stanzas. So we're going to be going through a little poetry. So in Killing Rationalism, we're going to bring rationalism back in, and we're going to balance it and moderate it, and we're going to say, you are a pole, you are the yin, and the yin means nothing without the yang. The yang is a balanced, irrational aspect. And the irrational, of course, can confirm meaning. It touches all the quantifiably immeasurable aspects of the human condition, which I would argue is the majority of the human condition. So we're going to be going through some of my favorite poems. We're going to be trying to balance rationality and irrationality. It's time to be irrational in poems. It's time to be rational in science. Very simple. These two do not negate each other. But we're men of many hats, right? We're humans of many hats. If we want to be the scientist, we put the scientist hat on. We want to be the poet, we put the poet hat on. So like I said, we're going to go through some poems now. I'm going to give you some background. I don't know anything about poetry. I'm just getting into poetry because of Gebser, because of the Kill Rationalism. I want to healthily stimulate the irrational and romantic aspects in me and bring that to, like I said, balanced, moderated pole. The yin and the yang. For too long, we've been doing the yin and only the yin. Now it's time to rebalance with the yin and the yang. So we're going to be going through some of my favorite stanzas. Now, this doesn't mean much because, like I said, I don't know a ton of poetry. I don't know about the history of it or any super deep interpretations. We're not going to be getting into incredibly deep, substantive interpretations. All I'm going to be trying to do is share some of these with you, adding a little commentary, though it's not going to be that, I just don't want you guys to think that I'm some secret Shakespeare walking around. I'm not. I don't claim to be. But we're going to have some fun. This is going to be a fun video. So I think I got a few poets here. And first, let's talk about what poetry is. Well, poetry is the history of the soul. Now, if you follow my Jean Gebser video, you will recognize history is defined as attributing sense to the senseless, emphasis on senseless. We acknowledge and respect that the senseless exists, unlike the rationalists. The rationalists take the whole of any situation, reduce it to what is quantifiably measurable and consciously known, and they say, I have the whole. I know the whole. No, you do not. Everything else that you have divided off goes against the idea of you having the whole in your knowledge. So they think there's only sense, no senseless. But we, as integral consciousness thinkers, we reject that nonsense. We say no. We integrate the senseless with the sense. We integrate irrationality with rationality. And that's what the poets are doing. They are attributing sense to the senseless, that is to say, in matters of the soul, the internal. If you insist on rational terms, the psyche, whatever. And it's really a beautiful thing when you realize this is what they're doing. They're able to touch on these truths that though touch an aspect of the human condition that are quantifiably immeasurable are still true nonetheless. And without any further ado, let's just get right into it. It is the language of the soul. So we're going to start with Holderlin. Now, most of these I know are Holderlin's poems. I think some of them I might have mixed them up. And the reason why is because sometimes I'll just go on ChatGPT and I'll say, give me Holderlin's best stanzas. 10 best stanzas. And then they give me something like, those are pretty good. Give me 10 more. Give me 10 more. Give me Goethe's best stanzas from Faust. Give me whatever. Give me Wordsworth. So that's kind of how I engage with poetry. I do want to read poetries from top to bottom, or actual full poetic works from top to bottom. But I'm reading Gebser right now, and I've got a lot on my plate right now. So let's get right into it. So this one's from Holderlin. He says, quote, grant me only one summer, you mighty ones, and one autumn to ripen my song, that my heart, filled with sweet music, may more willingly die within me. The soul, which in life did not find its divine right, shall not find peace among the dead. Now, I thought that was a beautiful line, especially the last line here. The soul, which in life did not find its divine right, shall not find peace among the dead. So the individual that does not find their spiritual purpose, that does not find spiritual enlightenment or spiritual meaning in the world, who does not engage with the world in totality, but rather a rationalist version of it, will find no peace among the dead. So it's important that the dead and life here, these are not antithetical opposites. These do not negate each other. What happens on this earth affects you're standing on the spiritual other side. You must find your divine right, as Holderlin said, in order to access and be granted that spiritual security or satisfaction. And of course, with the soul, of course, he's acknowledging the soul does exist. The rationalists do not acknowledge the soul exists because they can't see it, measure it, or tangibly grasp on it. That's your problem, not mine. You're the nihilistic, suicidal ones who are ruining everything. So, and that's what I'm going to put on my epitaph, I think, on my grave, where it says, "The soul, which in life did not find its divine right, should not find peace among the dead." And then I'm going to put, "Here lies a soul who found his divine right." That's what I think I'm going to do, unless something changes. So we'll go to another one from Holderlin. Before me, trees rustle in the wind, and on the hill the evening sun gently touches the old tower, greeting in golden peace. O world, where are you? Do you love and hold me still? I think I hear your echo faint, but all is vanishing away. Soon I shall rest, a quiet spirit among the quiet, and love and suffering shall shy, in holy harmony. Let me try that last sentence again. Quiet spirit among the quiet, and love and suffering shall sigh in holy harmony. Now, of course, the holy harmony, that is at maybe integral or mythical or magical, whatever you want to do it. It is not the triangular divided rational thought. Love and suffering, these are, if you watch my Gebser series, mythical consciousness structure, or products of the mythical structure. They're viewed here, rightfully so, as polar complementarity. They sigh in holy harmony, that is to say, the yin and the yang. The 2D flat circle, of course, is both still, when you look at it, it's both still, but it's also both moving. And that's the same thing. Come on. That's the same thing here. So the circle is a terrible circle here. The circle is still, right? It's not really moving, but it also is moving, right? It's also going out here. This is polar complementarity. This is not a contradiction. It becomes a contradiction when you place it in dualistic antithesis. And love and suffering shall sigh in holy harmony on the spiritual other side says that there is a transcendence to unity on the spiritual other side. And I think I like the way Holderlin describes the spiritual world, the spiritual other side, as this peaceful, idyllic thing. It's very calm and tranquil and peaceful the way he describes, and I think that's very beautiful because down here everything's so divided and meaningless that there's no way to get any good meaning. And this peaceful nature is a good. We have a good follow up onto that. He says. You walk above in light, on soft ground, blessed spirits. Shining breezes of heaven gently touch you, as fingers of the artist touch holy strings, fate free, like the sleeping infant, breathe the immortals. Chastely guarded, in bud-like spirit, blossoms forever their happy eyes. But we, where we go, our hearts bleed, and will fall blindly from hour to hour, like water thrown from cliff to cliff, downward for years into the unknown. So this is that polar complementarity I was just talking about. We have the beautiful spiritual, where he says, you touch holy strings, and the bud-like spirits, and this very peaceful and very just serene imagery that's being evoked here. But then, of course, where we are, where the humans are on Earth, we have that other pole. We have the yang to the yin, the world of not peace but problems, the world of contingency, of transience, of that sort of stuff. Where in the spiritual world, according to Holderlin, it's very peaceful. So, in the same way that the moon waxes and wanes with its crescents, and the sun is still and constant, a constant source of energy, whereas the moon waxes and wanes. You can see the polar complementarity here, not dualistic antithesis. Same thing with the spiritual other side and the sort of fallen world that we exist here on Earth. Now, of course, like I said, I'm not super well read in poetry or interpretation, but when he says something like water thrown from cliff to cliff, that's not just water thrown from cliff to cliff, right? The water is a symbol for something, as is the cliff. So you can always, always, always go deeper. Let's do another one. He says, a sign we are without meaning, pain untold and fleeting breath. The gods have left us, silent, dreaming, bound between new life and death. So this is a really great, succinct way of describing the pain and the anguish of the gods, which is to say, that spiritual other side being rationalized away, and the meaning conferred by the spiritual other side, by the quantifiably immeasurable aspects of the human condition. That's all gone now, and we are pain untold and fleeting breath, and breath being the essence of human being, and it's fleeting now. We're not even really human beings. Our life source has been taken away. It's going, it's gone. It's been rationalized away, torn apart. Um, and then, of course, bound between new life and death, not life or death. Life and death are a polar complementary coexistence within which we participate daily. There is death in life and life in death. Um, just as in the yin and the yang, on the white side there's a little black dot, and on the black side there's a little white dot. One is contained in the other. So death in life could be experiences of the death pull of the soul. For me personally, I was clinically depressed, and it was really awful. That is death in life. I have experienced death in life that drive towards suicide and drive towards really bad things, really terrible, terrible things. Um, and some people understand this and are able to achieve these experiences and then springboard off that achievement, off those experiences, to carry the spirit forward and do great things. So life and death, good and evil, these are polar complement coexistences within which we participate daily. And the tension between these two poles is where the soul and spirit is carried forward. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting star. The soul that rises with us, our life star, hath had elsewhere had its setting, and cometh from afar, not in entire forgetfulness, and not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory do we come from God, who is our home. So again, this is just, I think, a beautiful um, way of evoking this sort of spiritual lightness and this spiritual serenity of the other side, where when we return, we're not making this return towards nothing, towards this sort of void. No, it's the exact opposite. We're returning towards light and toward meaning and content and toward a spiritual significance that we simply cannot wrap our minds. The most spiritually um, the most spiritually, like, I guess, well-educated person probably knows 0.3% of what it is on the other side. So it's interesting stuff. All right, we're going to move on to Goethe now. This first one is from Mephistopheles' Introduction. This one is kind of incidentally related. I just love this stanza. It doesn't have too much to do with anti-rationalism, but I think it's interesting nonetheless. I've used this on people before. He says, I am the spirit that always negates. This is Mephistopheles' introduction. Mephistopheles is, of course, the devil, and when you hear the deal, you made a deal with the devil, that's what that's coming from. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and pretend I'm smarter than I am. I have not read Faust. I have not read some of these great things. I plan on reading it in the future, but I'm just trying to be honest of where I'm coming from. So he says, I am the spirit that always negates, and rightfully so, for all that is created deserves to perish. Thus, it would be best if nothing ever came to be. That is the best way of describing evil. The spirit that negates, for all that is created deserves to perish. It is a beautiful, poetic, and succinct way of describing evil. And you can see this in modern day life. People on kind of both sides of the political aisle start to um, negate things that are meaningful and impactful and conducive to a meaningful life, because either they have their own personal pathology or it goes against their ideology. So on the left, you have this sort of taking away everything that is meaningful or beneficial due to climate change because it's hurting climate change. And then on the far right, you have this sort of reactionary, no, I will regress for the sake of regressing. I will rebel against your progress for the sake of it being progress. I will negate your progress because it's either not conducive to my personal problems going up here or my ideology. Once you start seeing it, like when you start seeing people yelling at children for walking their dog, or just small things like that. That's always what that reminds me of. I always, anytime I've ever seen someone do that, I immediately just push them aside. I said, if I ever run into you again, I'm going to go out of my way to piss you off because you are Mephistopheles, and I don't like you. All right, this next one's amazing. It's called The Devil's Irony. Oh, this was a good one. It's very short. Quote, I am part of that power which always wills evil, yet always produces good. I will repeat for emphasis. I am part of that power which always wills evil, yet always produces good. Remember the 2D flat circle? So we have good and evil. All right. See that? Good, evil. I will evil, and yet I always produce good. That's weird. And yet when I will good, I always produce evil because people always try to fight against it. That's odd. It's almost like what Faust is saying is that good and evil and all these polar complementary aspects of the world are exactly that, polar complements within which we participate daily on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, moment-to-moment basis. And the tension between these two is where the soul grows. So in that sense, the problem of evil that the rationalists like to harp on about is less a problem and only becomes a problem when you frame these as dualistic antitheses to say that no, these are not complements, they negate each other. And if they negate each other, then one must be privileged over the other. And obviously, they're going to privilege the good. This is why you will good and produce evil. This is why the US, I don't want to make this super political, but this explains a lot of our foreign policy. It's just such a beautiful way of putting it. I am part of that power which always wills evil yet produces good. That is a perfect representation of the 2D complementary flat circle of good and evil, life and death, stuff like that. It is the embodiment of the death pole of the soul. I could not think of a better way of putting it. It's just beautiful. He was clearly a brilliant man. Okay, so the next one is the Earth Spirit's rebuke. Now, apparently the Earth Spirit was talking to Faust. Now, Faust is a rationalist, or at least at the time he was. So the Earth Spirit was giving him some game, and Faust said, yeah, but that doesn't make sense. So it must not be true. A rational sense, that is. And this is what the Earth Spirit says to Faust. Quote, you resemble the spirit you comprehend, not me. I've used this against rationalists. So the idea being expressed here is the rational mind cannot comprehend the spirit, right? Why? Obviously, as this series is hoping to point out, it is limited to what is quantifiably measurable and consciously known, and the spirits are quantifiably immeasurable and consciously somewhat known through work or through whatever, mostly unknown. Faust resembles the spirit he comprehends. He cannot resemble a true spiritual other side and in turn accrue the powers that will be afforded to him. He only resembles what he comprehends, which is rationality. So Faust is merely, he's not even a human. He is a personification of the laws of logic. That is bullcrap. That's nonsense. So that's just a beautiful way. You resemble the spirit you comprehend, not me. It's a beautiful way of saying, look, you're using the wrong mode of thought to comprehend me. You don't have the balls or the courage to use a different mode of thought because you're too drunk on your hipster cigarette smoking. Oh, I need to rationally deconstruct everything. No, we've transcended you and we're tired of you bugging us. Okay. Now, this next one's a spoiler for my Gebser series, The Soul. Goethe says, quote, two souls, alas, reside within my breast. One struggles to separate from the other. One, in coarse love's eager zest, clings to the world with clutching organs. The other lifts itself with forceful might up to the lofty fields of ancient light. Beautiful. Beautiful. The 2D flat circle, baby. There it is. Two souls, alas, reside within my breast. What does that mean? The death pole and the life pole. Goethe, who is more rational than any of you all, understood this. And then he gives a brief description. So one struggles to separate from the other. One encourses love One in coarse love's eager zest clings to the world with clutching organs. So the death pole, the soul says, this is all that matters, my friend. The world, the earth. The atheist rationalists have been, they're on the death pole of the soul. They have privilege of the death pole of the soul far, far too much. They are way over that. That's why they're nihilist determinists. And it's also why they get very angry and wrathful. That's what the death pole of the soul says. Drop that. There is no spirit. There's no other side. It's only earth. It's only power. It's only this. It's only Mephistopheles. And then the other one says, no, we lift. It lifts itself with forceful might up to the lofty fields of ancient light. It's directed up there towards the light, towards beauty, towards good, towards unity. And it's just a beautiful thing. And that's the poem Gebser uses to kind of make clear the two poles of the soul, death pole and the light pole. And it's very obvious as to why. I mean, it's a brilliant stanza. All right, now we're going to move on to Wordsworth. He's got some good ones. This one is from The World is Too Much With Us. He says, the world is too much with us, late and soon, getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Little we see in nature that is ours. We have given our hearts away, a sordid boon. We're going to rewind. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Getting to know the world is to have the world. Remember, Gebser reminded us this. We lay waste our powers. So in privileging rationality above all other aspects of the human condition, we have laid waste all other powers or aspects of the human condition that can be invoked to actually better our lives, both individually and as a collective. Stop wars, stop school shootings, stop doing all of this. No, we've sacrificed all that. We said we don't want to do any of that. All we want is mathematical, logical analysis. We're going to forego all the amazing powers and the amazing upscaling of abilities that pre-rationality, irrationality, and irrationality, when healthily balanced and channeled, can offer us, turning us into living gods compared to these guys. No, we will only want to stay in getting and spending. Getting and spending. That is will. I'm getting. There's an objectified world. Now I want to have the world. And spending, of course, that's money. And you spend quantifiably measurable units of money. $1, $5, 50 cents. That's rationalism, baby. That's obviously an allusion to rationality. And then, of course, Wordsworth was a heavy romantic, so you're going to see a lot of love of nature. Little we see in nature that is ours. We have given our hearts away, a sordid boon. So in pondering the mystery and the beauty of nature, the heart is filled. This is all immeasurable stuff. Nonetheless, it is real and it happens. The political right and modern in 2025 likes to complain that they are not rooted to the land and nature. Okay, so you can hear these rationalist guys saying that they look back at the unperspective world and they envy the romantic accounts of nature and the feelings of satisfaction and meaning that nature affords onto us. So interesting stuff there. Stop being a rationalist. Be a healthy romantic and a healthy rational person. Keep these two in balance, just like good and evil. Number 2, this is from Resolution and Independence. This is good. Like one who rose, proud of his skill, to reach a destined point, if wind and tide assist his will, yet reaching it, the man is all the same. He drifts with wind and tide until he lands again. So, like one who rose, proud of his skill. Remember, rationality is birth from the discovery of perspectivity. That is objectified space. Of course, there must be a corresponding subject. His skill, mine. I am proud of my skill, the ego, to reach a destined point. Remember, destiny is mental structure stuff, whereas mystery was magic structure stuff. Destiny, we know what is happening. Destiny happens in the diurnal waking consciousness. We know what will be the end result, whereas mystery in the magic structure, everything's done in darkness in terms of consciousness. So we don't know these things. So this is a very clear allusion to the rational mental conscious structure. And then he says, if wind and tide assist his will, we'll return to this. Yet, reaching it, the man is all the same. He drifts with wind and tide until he lands again. So with if wind and tide assist his will, to me, reminds me, or it makes me think of the idea that the world has its own agency. Even the quantifiably measurable aspects of the world have their own agency. And then on top of that, there are quantifiably immeasurable aspects, forces, energies, powers that assist the individual. But because the individual has become individualist and a complete egotistical maniac, he subsumes all powers and rewards for himself. He says, no, I will take responsibility for my accomplishments. I don't care that I got lucky. I don't care that the winds and the trees helped me. It's mine. Why is it mine? Because it's the ego. Why is the ego there? Mental consciousness structure, baby. Beautiful, I think, stanza about getting too lost in self-deception of an egotistical kind, where you're not humbling yourself and saying, I am merely an individual in a world that is infinitely vast and infinitely more complex than I could possibly understand. So interesting stuff. I like this stuff. All right, this next one's from the Prelude, Book 1. Just as we are, the immortal spirit grows like harmony in music. There is a dark, inscrutable workmanship that reconciles discordant elements, makes them cling together in one society. So I'm not going to say too much about this one. But when he says, one, the immortal spirit grows. This is a recognition of the spirit. Two, there is a dark, inscrutable workmanship that reconciles discordant elements. That, my friend, that sounds to me. Now, we haven't gotten there in my Gebser book yet. The acategorical, I want to say synthesis because that's going to be this acategorical integration of parts into an integral whole. There is a dark, inscrutable workmanship, which is to say there are quantifiably immeasurable energies or forces that integrate parts into a whole. So it seems like Wordsworth has, it's acategorical. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means it's not conducive to rational systemizing, I should say, excuse me. It's very abstract. It's very interesting. But I thought that was interesting. I think he kind of caught a glimpse of that. This next one is from Composed upon Westminster Bridge. He says, Earth has not anything to show more fair. Dull would he be of soul who could pass by a sight so touching in its majesty. This city now doth, like a garment, wear the beauty of the morning, silent, bare. So I thought, again, this is an explicit referencing of the soul. And the city now doth, like a garment, wear the beauty of the morning, silent, bare. The reason why I wanted to bring this one up is because, hold on, let me get 1 second. The city now doth like a garment, wear the beauty of the morning, silent, bare. This is for all you rationalists out there who say, oh, the world has no meaning to it. There's no meaning in the world. Everything's just nihilistic. Everything. No, no. You could look out in the city in one morning, catch one glimpse of the city, and write this beautiful stanza. And this stanza has conferred meaning on me. I can only imagine the meaning conferred on Wordsworth when he wrote this, or the feeling he felt that inspired him to write this. The only thing preventing you from that is you being too cool for school and not allowing yourself to engage healthily with aspects of the human condition that are not rational. They can be irrational, pre-rational, or irrational. The only thing preventing you from doing this, from looking at a blade of grass and deriving the entire meaning of the cosmos from it, is your too cool for school rationalist nonsense. You have a misunderstanding of rationality, and then you springboard off that to imprison yourself in a cage of nihilism, and then you want to cry about it and ruin the world. No. Number 5. From, quote, I wandered lonely as a cloud. For oft, I may have said that rant a little early. This is a good one. For oft, when on my couch I lie in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. So, in addition to my last just little mini rant there, I says you're sitting on the couch in a pensive mood. What you do is you open the inward, the internal reflective eye into the soul. There is nothing more meaningful or creative than the inward reflection into the soul. And as Wordsworth explains, you can do this when you're sitting on the couch feeling damn bored. Okay, go inward and look into the soul. And then, as he says, when you do so, your heart will fill, my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. So all you have to do is put aside your rationalist nonsense and then take any time that you need, look inward, and there you go. You'll be dancing with the daffodils, my friend. Sonnet 29. Yet in these thoughts myself despising, haply I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at break of day arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. There's another beautiful example of the spontaneous nature of these poems and what they're designed to do. And in an instant, you can go from being completely down in the dumps, completely nihilistic, completely just despairing. And then you remember that beautiful line. You remember that sonnet, and what it does, it touches the soul. And once that soul is touched, the power emanating from it you cannot help but to give in to it. Your mood just brightens, and your view on the world brightens, and everything is better because you reflected inward and you thought on the soul, you thought on poetry, you thought on art, you thought on meaning, you engaged irrationally, but in a healthy, balanced way. And that's just a beautiful way of putting it. You could be down in the dumps, then you think of these profound stanzas or lines just like that. You give crumbs to your soul, just like that. It eats them, and you're good. Beautiful. Sonnet 60. Like as the waves make toward the pebbled shore, so do minutes hasten to their end, each changing place with that which goes before. In sequent toil all forwards do content. This is, I think, a stanza about the mental conception of time. So do minutes hasten to their end. This is clearly a one time sequence, a causal chronological time sequence, each changing place with that which goes before. The difficulty in trying to find that exact moment between past and future and present. And I think in sequent toil, all forwards do content. So what I think he's gleaning on is that this is a bastardization of time. This is a mental deficient destruction of time. And I'm actually, once I learn more about it, I'm going to be doing a Kill Rationalism video on the mental destruction of time, or rational, I should say. So there you go. Now we have two more, only two more. Sorry, guys. T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland. And this is going to be kind of an unusual one. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dry tubers. Now, one, he says, breeding lilacs out of the dead land. Okay, so he can't even help when he to sort of posit that polar complementarity, breeding, which is of course giving life, and then the dead land, obviously that would be its polar complement. But two, there's four little words that um, have always stuck. The second I read these four words and I learned about Gebser, they have stuck with me, and I will stick, and they will stick with me until I die. I know it. Winter kept us warm. Now I think this is a beautiful, even if unintentional, elucidation of the mythical 2D flat circle, the polar complementarity. So winter kept us warm. You could interpret this in a couple ways. You could interpret this in 1,000 ways. I'm just going to give you my shallow interpretation. So one, you could say, of course, since it's cold outside and it's winter, that in turn causes us to heat up the house. So in many ways, the coldness cannot help but produce its polar complement, right? Kind of the yin cannot help but produce the yang, as is the case. You cannot have a polar complement where you just toss one out and then we're only clicking with one. It's not really a polar complement now, is it? But here's my thing. So winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow. Now, snow obviously is going to it's going to make everything cold, obviously. But the winter kept us warm. I think that's a reference to the warmth in his own soul. I think the external world of the winter snow has a corresponding warmthness in the internal state. So the external coldness corresponds to the internal warmth. And I think it's a beautiful way of expressing that polar complementarity. So anytime I remind myself, anytime I'm thinking of, I'm worried I'm being a little too rationalist, I just think winter kept us warm. And think, what does that signify? Polar complementarity. And that polar complementarity confers psychic unity, which you need to thrive in the world. So it's really just a beautiful, beautiful way. The cold external corresponds to the warm internal. The correspondence is obvious and twofold: cold and warm, external, internal. I think it's a beautiful way of expressing that. And this will be the last one, and this is going to be a spoiler for our Gebser series. So Navalis, I don't know who that is, but apparently my man had the integral structure mutate in his mind. 'Cause my man saw it. Now listen to this. When number and numerals cease to be a power o'er the creaturely, when lovers and the poets far more learn than the scholars are, when world to free life can return and to itself again adjourn, where light and shade conjoin once more to the true clarity of yore, and tales and poetry provide to real world history the guide, then can one cryptic word commence to drive the topsy-turvy hence. Beautifully said, just beautiful. So the anti-rationalist stuff is obvious. So excuse me, when number and numerals cease to be a power or over over the creaturely. So that's pretty obvious, right? Rationalism, when once this quantifiably measurable division stops killing us, and we recognize that, hey, we can transcend this. Um, when the lovers and the poets far more learned than the scholars are. Why would the poet be far more learned than the scholar is? Remember in the beginning of this video? Poetry is a history of the soul. It's a qualitative history, and history is attributing sense to the senseless. So they are learned. They are just learned in the realm of the quantifiably immeasurable and consciously known, somewhat known. Whereas the scholars are merely lost in the quantifiably measurable and consciously known. Anyone can learn those things, and those things are less potent because they are quantifiably measurable and consciously known. Whereas the poets, they understand, they have opened the eyes, the inward reflection, and looked and see, and they have attributed sense to the senseless or had sense directed to them. And they are more learned because their history, though quantifiably immeasurable, is simply more powerful than this shallow rationalist science crap. It's nonsense. And he says, when a world to free life, as Gebser says, is origin. And of course, integral structure tries to consciously reattain that feeling of origin and exploit the powers that it confers upon you. So there you go. And then he says, where light and shade conjoin once more, as opposed to being divided from each other. And divided, of course, signifies mental, rational consciousness structure. To the true clarity of your, this will obviously be referencing verition, Verition, or a wearing of truth. A truth has been imparted to you when you have achieved or reached integral consciousness structure. And then he says, and tales and poetry provide to real world history the guide. So notice how these are not two dualistic antitheses, but they kind of complement each other. It is not that the truths of the sciences are placed in opposition to the truths of the poets. It is that they work together to guide each other, to balance each other, and you cannot have full effectiveness and efficiency. Excuse my rational language there. Without this balance, but when you try to privilege one or the other, you have a problem. And then he says, then can one cryptic word commence to drive the topsy-turvy hence. So of course, one cryptic word is probably going to have a bunch of meaning as opposed to the singular meaning sort of attributed to a word in rational thought. A equals A. A cannot equal A and B at the same time. So symbols and words have one definition, one meaning. And then the power of the world will return. Not the world. The word will return. No longer just the byte or the measuring tool or the ruler or something. So that would be it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. This is just kind of a fun video. I apologize. I'm not a poetic guy. I'm not like a super deep. I would like to be one day, but that's going to be a while. So if any of these connected with you, maybe just kind of write them down and just think about them. And anytime you're worrying you're being way too rationalist or you're not having that psychic unity or whatever it is, you just need a little inspiration or whatever, some meaning, some purpose in your life. God forbid, just memorize those or just think of it. Maybe hopefully this can inspire you to check out some good poems and stuff. And yeah, I hope you guys had fun. What was I going to say after this? Also, so of course this, as I said, this was opening up the irrational romantic side to me. That's not a problem, but as much as I like to rip on the rationalists, you don't want to go the other way too. We're not rejecting rationality entirely. I feel the need to constantly remind you of this. When it's time to be scientific, when it's time to be mathematical, we're not getting emotional. We're not being romantic. We're not letting emotions guide us and overwhelm us. We're being strictly disciplined and mental. So that's where the balance comes in. So be rational and irrational, not rational or irrational. I love you guys so much. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And if you guys are into poetry, let me know in the comments who you think I would like. So thank you guys.